Hi everyone, welcome to my review of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village in 2004. Here is the DVD, and we are here with The Village. Yes, I've been looking forward to reviewing this, and maybe a bit hesitant in reviewing this because I know it's going to be maybe controversial. Yes, The Village is one of the most divisive films, but really it is mainly hated on. It's not. It's maybe the first one that really people said, Shyamalan is losing it, in terms of quality, and just many aspects, and it done well at the box office again. But yes, critically, not successful really at all. It's got less than 50% on Metacritic now and Rotten Tomatoes, and it just it's known to have one of the worst twists of all time. People say that anyway, and this will be yet another spoiler-filled review later on in the review, just like Signs. Mainly because I want to defend once again the ending, and I want to back up Shyamalan here, because this film, I've hinted at many times, but for me, it's just I don't quite get why this film is, so hated on. Everyone has their opinions. That's fine. If you hate the film, that's fine. If you don't like it, great. But I love the film. I think I don't like to say misunderstood, but I just don't get how this is detested in many, and it's regarded as one of the worst twists, all this kind of stuff. Because for me, and I've not really, probably a double whammy here, but I've said previously that really there was one other film that came close to Sixth Sense. But really, actually, I reveal that this is another one that is very much close to the Sixth Sense, for the best Shyamalan film, along with Signs. And Unbreakable is not far off either. So it'd be quite interesting with the ranking, because these four films, just so close. In terms of my preference and quality for me. I think yet another, for me, one of the greatest films ever made. I call The Village one of the best films ever made. I can't quite hear the kind of the support here, because yes, not much people call this a masterpiece, but I would say it's one of the best films of the century, and it's in my top 100 films of all time currently. That is an achievement, and for Shyamalan to do this 4 times in a row, I was actually kind of thinking about it, and I think, really, in terms of roughly the first films from a director, for them all to be this high on my list, it's probably, it's not really happened, you could say. Maybe, there's maybe one other director, but even then, these first 4 films, big films from Shyamalan. Of course, I've not seen Wide Awake and stuff, but yeah, these films, are just so good, so legendary, and just they're all very different, but in their own way, just masterpieces. This film, of course, it appears to be set in the 19th century. This village, this community, they're introduced to gradually. The opening scene, is a death of one of the members, Brendan Gleeson's son, and yes, he's in the film. This has an amazing cast. It has possibly the most, the greatest cast in terms of ensemble of a Shyamalan film. It has Brendan Gleeson, of course, William Hurt, who gives a striking performance, Bryce Dallas Howard, Joaquin Phoenix, one of the best actors of all time. He's even got a small, appearance from Jesse Eisenberg. You've got Sigourney Weaver in there. So yeah, it's a massive cast, and a very underrated actor as well, Michael Pitt. He's in some great stuff as well. Boardwalk Empire, if you've seen that. But Brendan Gleeson, I think actually is a very underrated actor as well. But yeah, massive cast in this. Shyamalan, of course, makes an appearance, a cameo as well, towards the end of the film. But yes, basically, this film, we'll get to the spoilers, in a bit, but it's basically, it's a period piece from Shyamalan. Again, another what appears to be a horror film, a thriller, and a mystery. Most of his films are, they share the same sort of thing, being a mystery, and you learn very quickly that there's these creatures, surrounding the village, this community, and they basically, you're not allowed to go out a certain part, and there's markings and everything, and there's kind of a mutual kind of agreement, you could say, and very weird. I think he perfectly builds up the mystery in this film, and backstory of how I watched this. I think I was probably about 9 when I saw this. My parents had seen it in the cinema. They loved it, actually, and we rented it out. So I must have been 9, because it was the following year after it had come out, which was obviously 2004. So it's probably 2005. I was probably about 9, and I absolutely adored it. It's really, I was in my element. If you see my channel, you know I like period films. And Shyamalan is one of my favourite directors when on form. This film just, I absolutely adored it. And yes, the characters in this film, once again, Shyamalan just genius writing here, and the characters, there's such an emotional attachment. Joaquin Phoenix plays Lucius Hunt, and he's basically one of the main characters of the film. You could say in many regards at first the protagonist, but really the main character of the film is Ivy Walker, and she's played by Bryce Dallas Howard. And she gives an absolutely mesmerising performance. It's full of emotion, innocence, likability, and she just pulls it off perfectly. And you've got massive supporting cast, as I've said. Edward is played basically one of the main elders of the film, played by William Hurt, and he is absolutely brilliant in this film. A striking performance, and just how many warm characters are in this film, and just the romance that forms. This is probably Shyamalan's greatest love story, and I think the romance between Ivy and Lucius is one of the best in cinema, and this is not a massive epic film. It's very, very short actually, and regardless, the romance is perfectly set up, and I just felt so much for this. It's one of the most purest, uplifting, moving romances in cinema for me. I think Joaquin Phoenix is perfect in this film, as is Bryce Dallas Howard, and just the chemistry, how beautiful it is and spiritual, this romance, and it just, again, great comedy, in here. It's more of a serious film, more of a mystery, more darker, you could say, in many regards, to some of the other ones before this, but in the same sense, it's got great comedy, and it's very, very uplifting and innocent. I think the innocence, of childhood, and just, growing up and all this, and love, the innocence of love is portrayed perfectly in this film, and, I think the cinematography, yes, the best cinematography in a Shyamalan film for me, and yes, I'll say it now, the best score that James Newton Howard has ever done. This is even better than Unbreakable. And yes, they're close in different ways, and all these scores are so good. But I think The Village is his best. It's very, very epic at times, but it's just so beautiful and true to the soul. And it's just wonderful, wonderful score. The emotion, it makes me well up, and it's so well used in this film. And of course, for me, one of the best scenes in cinema, certainly one of them is the scene, when Joaquin and Bryce Dallas Howard, they kind of, he basically saves her at one point in the film very early on, and takes her into the house. That is just, it's just a combination of everything in cinema, use of music, slow motion timing, just the way it is done, that scene, and the placement, within, the kind of the tension, it's just wonderful. This film is so comforting to me. I think that's one of the things. This film, it's just so peaceful. This kind of community. It is kind of a horror film and stuff as well. But yeah, I just think it's so peaceful. I could watch this, forever, and just feel at ease. It's one of them films. I think Shyamalan perfectly captures the kind of idyllic nature of this, and we'll get to what other things in a few minutes, but. Of course, the whole film changes once you rewatch it, because of many things that happen after really the hour mark, you could say. But yes, basically, I think in every regard, the script has been criticised, apart from the twist, as well. And I just don't quite see it for me. I think the script is wonderful. It's human. It's thought provoking. It's so complex and deep, and just. It's just wonderful. It's just, as well, the production across the board is absolutely stunning. I think it's some of the best cinematography I've ever seen as well, and the editing and all this kind of stuff. It's got kind of a dreamlike quality, certainly early on, which is kind of perfect, because as the film goes on, it becomes more and more, you could say, darker and more, not more natural. It's very hard to describe, but watch the film and find out. But this was only on DVD as well, and already, it's just absolutely stunning. And I think this film needs a Blu-ray. It really would just allow me to see the colours more and all this, the kind of attention to detail. Blu-ray is really, at least, the way the filmmakers are trying to get the films to look. DVD is just never going to be, exactly what they want to show, and I think VHS is obviously even worse. But this really needs a Blu-ray, and it would just enhance it even more. But as it stands, the greatest cinematography of Shyamalan that he's ever done, and I think just a stunning film in every regard. I think just Adrien Brody in this film as well, another character. He plays Noah, and he's basically, he's mentally ill, and he laughs at a lot of stuff, and even the you could say the scary moments in the film, and the kind of the appearance of the creatures and all this kind of stuff. He laughs and just doesn't take it. He doesn't know what's going on really, and I think that's very, very powerful the way this is done, and you've kind of got a love triangle going on, with that. With him, Joaquin and Bryce Howard, and it's so perfect. And yeah, it's just in every sense. Personally, for me, and this is my review, it is a masterpiece of cinema. So yes, now I think we'll talk about the spoilers, get into the spoilers, and talk about the ending, maybe the halfway mark kind of event and all this kind of stuff, and why I think really it's one of the very best twists in cinema, and just. Rewatching it, every time you rewatch it, it becomes more of a tragedy, and this is what some of the best twists do. They kind of make the film more. You could say it could be more disturbing, like Psycho, for example. It's more disturbing, when you know the twist, and it makes the film even better, and even you get the first time initial reveal of the twist, say like in Psycho, but then you get a whole kind of a deepening of the film, and for example, it's a bit like this. It's not just a horror film, because it is at times, it's built to be kind of a horror suspense. But basically, this film, of course, the twist has been panned, and it's been called absolutely diabolical by many critics. Some people like it, but most people would say it's trash, and I'd say it's genius. What this film does, of course, you find out, and here's the spoilers, that the elders have been trying to protect everyone from the outside world, and actually it's not the 19th century. It was basically formed in the 1970s. This whole community, and you've got these elders, kind of founded mainly by William Hurt's character of Edward, and basically, yes, they formed this village, and they've created these fake creatures, which are the elders kind of take part in turns, in kind of have these costumes on that they built and they made, and all these different things, these rules that they set up in order to kind of keep everyone away and keep the village, the community, going forever really. And this is because they were a grief counselling place, and basically they agreed to kind of form this place so that they're protected from all the troubles of the outside world. They basically all had something happen to their family members, or someone close to them. Some of them, a lot of them have died, have family members that died, and the whole idea of it is because of that. And it kind of, it's basically their way of kind of escaping, you could say, from the outside world, and making sure, of course, with the creation of these creatures and these rules and these different things like dead animals, these kind of the red colour, the paint that's used, and all this, and the flowers, to kind of basically keep this community going, so that they never have to have their kids, or anything, experience what they went through. And it's kind of, it's a really, really powerful, one of the most powerful twists in cinema, because what it does, it makes the whole film more complex, more of a tragedy. I can relate to this, kind of, as well, modernisation, but not just that, just generally just escaping from the outside world. And in this film, they all have had obviously tragedies that have happened to them, and basically it's their way of escaping. And this film is a way of escaping for me, as well. It's like a fantasy kind of in its own way. It's a period film, but it's kind of not. It's just so wonderful, and basically it makes the film, when you rewatch it, more tragic, more deep, complex, and I don't care if it's not as scary, because that the kind of the creatures aren't really the creatures. But I will say that the way that the film, and any film, if it's shot in a way that is tense in itself, even if you've seen it, it is still scary, and it is still effective, and it's suspenseful, and it gets the blood pumping. But this film doesn't need to be scary in the sense that there's monsters out there. It's kind of, it just makes it more tragic, more compelling for me. I think just like Unbreakable and stuff, it just makes the film even better on a rewatch. The Sixth Sense as well. I think this in some ways is probably as well his best twist. I think The Sixth Sense and this are very close for that, and Signs is not really a twist. It's kind of just the final bulk of information revealed, and as well it's kind of hinted on before that with Shyamalan's character anyway, with the water and stuff. But yes, this film is absolutely stunning. The twist is brilliant for me, and it just makes the whole film, as I say, more deep, more complex, and kind of more human, more powerful for sure. And these characters, it's just their way of dealing with the outside world. And that's kind of one of the themes that Shyamalan explores. In isolation, kind of all this kind of stuff, and it's just pulled off perfectly for me. I think it's a very, very misunderstood, or at least not valued twist. I think the whole film, it's just perfect for me, and I think as well, of course, more spoilers here. When Noah kind of when he stabs Lucius, of course, that's when the film as well becomes something different. It's basically as well how love can drive something like this. It takes as well so much bravery that is explored in the film. Character of Ivy is one of the best for me in cinema. She's a character that so brave, and kind of the fact that she's blind, she cannot see, but she's the only one that goes to the towns, and they all abandon her as well. People that are meant to go over, and basically they leave her, and she still manages to put it off. And what keeps her going is love, and it's just in that sense, it's one of the most powerful films of all time for me. And I think the whole community, all these characters, they're all have their own kind of roles, and they're also great. I think this is a perfect film as an ensemble, and as a beautiful love story, as a kind of a way it kind of explores modernization, and just kind of communities trying to get away from the outside world, and of course when you have that final act, as well, what happens with the actual the chase and all this kind of stuff, and the falling into the pit. It's greatness after greatness, and of course a very, very really, really powerful moment when you actually see the actual world, in present day, and everything changes, but you see the interaction, and it's just, for me personally, it just couldn't have been pulled off better. And the very, very ending scene as well, absolutely brilliant. I just think this film is one of the masterpieces of cinema, and for me, easy full marks. And that everyone's going to, of course, be going, what, you're mental for doing this. I just don't see how this is hated on. And yes, I do think it's one of the top 100 films that I've seen, at least my favourite. I do think it's better than Citizen Kane and films like this. It's just absolutely flawless for me, and such an emotional resonance for me. And every moment of the film, it's got many moments of just joyous nature, and of course the way that nature is captured in this film is truly spiritual and beautiful. The use of colour in the film, this is definitely the best cinematography. Of course, Roger Deakins would work with Shyamalan on this, and it's the best cinematography that Shyamalan has ever achieved. And I think just everything in this film, the framing, the very, very wonderful shots, the kind of subtlety of it all, it's just perfect. And the way it's been edited together is anything but a B film. Many have called this kind of a B film. And Shyamalan kind of has a principle, at least with these early ones, he's making kind of B films that feel like they're not, feel like they're big films. And it just achieves this through mastering all the elements of filmmaking. And this film is easily into my plus tiers. Of course, it gets the same rating as all these previous three have got, of 100% plus. Tier 1, yes. Not only is The Village not a bad film, not just a great film, but it's one of my favourite 100 films of all time. I don't care. This is my opinion, and it's my review. If you hate this film, if you want to just, toss it in, in the trash or whatever, make a review about it, and I think fine if you hate the film, perfectly fine. But for me, it's one of the best films ever made, and I think every time I see it, it gets better and better. And The Sixth Sense, Signs, this, very, very, very close. I think Unbreakable as well. I'm not going to reveal. These films are so good, So for me, perfect. It's just possibly the greatest. Kind of basically, not really his debut films, but pretty much his debut films. Early phase of a career, it could be the best consistently ever. I think maybe only a couple of directors, have kind of achieved just as much or more. But then still, I think for these four films to be in my top 100 is very, very rare. Not much filmmakers really have done this, at least to start off with their career. Shyamalan, of course, has gone into, he's come back now, but he went into a phase where he got critically panned and, I think trashed by everyone. And I've not seen all of his ones. I've not seen Lady in the Water. I actually have it here. Got it on Blu-ray, and you can see already. Yeah, it's secondhand. I didn't want to, go ahead and waste some money on it, but I want to see it. I've got to acquire all of the films at some point, and it could be bad, but it could be something I like. Who knows? I'm not going to say this is going to be a bad film, because people say this film, The Village, is shit, and I think it's one of the best films ever made. Yes, I'm not ruling out this could be bad. I'm not going to be very, very get ahead of myself, but I'll check this out and it'll be reviewed this week. And then you've got The Happening, which I have seen. It's not a good film in my opinion. Not seen The Last Airbender. Really don't want to see that, but I have to. And then of course you've got After Earth. I have seen it. I don't think it was one of the worst films I've made or anything. But yes, it's not a good score either for me. And of course then you've got The Visit. I haven't seen. Split is a return to greatness for me, for Shyamalan. And yes, it's not. I would say it's not as good as these four films, but Split. But it is a stunning film. And Glass, I am massively hyped for. The Village is one of the best films ever made for me, and it could be Shyamalan's greatest in many regards. These four films, they all have something that I maybe like more. In this, it's the kind of love story, the period setting, all this, the cinematography, the music. Signs is kind of warm family, kind of small film, that kind of explores faith in many ways. The Sixth Sense probably has its greatest narrative and the warmth of the pairing of Bruce Willis, Hey Joel, and Unbreakable was this epic origin story. So it's very, very close, these four films. But The Village is an absolutely perfect, for me, magnum, masterpiece. Really, it's not my tier S, but yes, no, it really on many days this could be considered by me as the greatest Shyamalan, and I think it's in the top three most underrated films of all time, along with maybe and this doesn't take into account how many Oscars Dance with Wolves got, but the hate it gets. Dance with Wolves, along with that, and probably Eyes Wide Shut as the most underrated films. This is definitely up there, and it's an absolute masterpiece for me. And yes, would I say I'd recommend it? Well, most people have probably seen it and hate it. Some people like it, of course. It's got a bit more of attention in the last few years, and maybe a reconsideration, but it generally isn't liked. So I can't say that people will probably like it, but this is my opinion. A different review. Not much people probably say it's a masterpiece, but I personally would. And let me know what you think in the comments. Of course, if you don't like the film, that's great. That's fine. Everyone has their own opinion, but for me, I do think it's one of the kind of lost. Misunderstood masterpieces. And yeah, I just think on every level of filmmaking, it really is. Pure greatness, a purity to it, of cinematics and just humanism, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful film that I'll always, it'll probably always be my top 100 or at least 150 films. So yes, thanks for watching my review of M. Night Shyamalan's The Village.